Some days just feel heavier than others, don't they? You wake up and it's not your body that's tired, but your heart. It's a weight that's hard to describe, a quiet ache that follows you through the day. You move through the motions, you smile when you were supposed to, you nod at the right times. But inside, you feel a million miles away. You look around, hoping someone, anyone, will notice. But the world keeps spinning, fast and loud, and in those moments, when you feel the most invisible, you realize that sometimes, all it takes to make things better is a little bit of kindness. A simple, unexpected moment of connection. I once witnessed something that completely changed my perspective on healing. It wasn't in a therapist's office or a self-help seminar. It was in a crowded, noisy coffee shop. Everyone was in their own little world. Phones were out. Fingers were tapping. Minds were clearly elsewhere. People were ordering their drinks, grabbing their pastries, and rushing out the door. It was a symphony of hurried movements and polite, but distant interactions. No one was really looking at each other. They were looking past each other, through each other, their gazes fixed on the next task, the next notification, the next destination. It was the kind of scene we see every single day. So normal, we barely register it anymore. The air was thick with a collective, unspoken busyness, a sense of urgency that left no room for stillness, no space for genuine observation. And in the middle of all this chaos, in a quiet corner, sat a person. They were just there, not scrolling on their phone, not reading a book, not working on a laptop. They were just sitting, staring into a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. Their shoulders were slightly slumped, and there was a profound stillness about them that stood in stark contrast to the frantic energy of the room. They weren't asking for help. They weren't trying to get anyone's attention. They were simply existing in their own quiet bubble of pain, wrapped in a blanket of invisibility. You could feel the weight they were carrying, even from across the room. It was a silent, heavy presence. How many of us have been that person, sitting in a crowd, yet feeling utterly and completely alone, wishing for a sign that we matter, that we're not just a ghost in the machine of daily life? As I watched, I felt a pang of my own loneliness, a recognition of that feeling. I thought about walking over, but what would I say? Are you okay? It felt intrusive, too direct. So, like everyone else, I almost looked away. I almost let the moment pass, convincing myself it wasn't my place. But then, something beautiful happened. Another person, who had just gotten their coffee, stopped. They didn't have a grand speech prepared. There was no dramatic gesture. They simply paused on their way to the door and looked at the person in the corner. Really looked at them. And then they offered a small, gentle smile. They walked over and quietly said, "Hey, I don't know what you're going through, but I've been there. You're not alone." They placed a fresh, steaming cup of coffee on the table next to the cold one. It was a moment that lasted no more than 30 seconds. A simple act of human connection, a brief acknowledgement in a world that so often rushes past. And that was all it took. That small, simple moment broke the dam. The person who had been so still, so contained, looked up, their eyes wide with surprise. And then the tears started to fall. They weren't loud, dramatic SOBs. They were quiet, steady tears rolling down their cheeks. But these weren't tears of sadness. You could see it on their face. It was relief. The pure, unadulterated relief of being seen, after who knows how long of feeling invisible, of carrying their burden in silence. Someone had finally noticed. Someone had stopped. Someone had cared enough to offer a simple, human gesture without asking for anything in return. The person who had offered the coffee just stood there for a moment, a hand gently on their shoulder, and then they left. No exchange of names, no long conversation, just a shared moment of humanity. The person in the corner sat with the new cup of coffee, their hands wrapped around its warmth. They took a slow, deep breath, and for the first time since I had noticed them, their shoulders relaxed. A subtle shift, but a significant one. The heavy, oppressive weight seemed to lift just a little. They eventually picked up their bag and walked out of the coffee shop. I have no idea who they were or what happened to them after that. They went their separate way, and the person who showed them kindness went theirs. But I know with absolute certainty that something fundamental had changed for them in that moment. The world, which had probably felt so cold and indifferent just minutes before, now seemed a little lighter. A little warmer. Hope, which might have felt like a distant, impossible dream, now felt possible again. Because a stranger took a few seconds out of their day to say, "I see you." This is something we all need to remember. We live in a world that is obsessed with finding answers, with fixing problems. We read books, we listen to podcasts, we search for the 5 easy steps to happiness. And those things can be helpful, of course. But we often forget the most powerful medicine of all. Simple human connection. Not all healing comes from having the right answers or a perfect plan. It doesn't always come from talking everything out or analyzing every detail of our pain. Sometimes the most profound healing comes from the quiet, unspoken validation of being seen. It's the friend who sits with you in silence when you're grieving. It's the coworker who notices you having a rough day and just asks if you want to grab a coffee. It's the stranger who offers a kind smile for no reason at all. These are the moments that stitch us back together when we feel like we're falling apart. So, look around you. Really look. Past the phones, past the deadlines, past the superficial interactions. See the people around you. And if you see someone sitting in their own quiet corner, looking a little lost, maybe you can be the one to stop. You don't need to have the answers. You don't need to solve their problems. You just need to let them know that they're not invisible. Because sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the simple, powerful acknowledgement that they exist and that they matter. Not all healing comes from answers. Sometimes it just comes from being seen. Thank you for watching. If this resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more content. And remember to be kind to yourself and to others. You never know whose world you might change with a simple act of seeing.